Okay, it's 11:15, so we'll go ahead and get started. Before we go into the presentations from the commission staff, I need to ask if you've all had a chance to review the minutes from the July meeting. Okay, I had sent a couple of comments, so I will just kind of announce them to you. I did notice that both Commissioner Eames and Commissioner Beulah had been left off the list of the attendees, so I did make that comment. And the other comment that I made was just on the header section for pages 2 to 4. It had the April date instead of July, so those updates were sent. Were there any other comments from any of you that need to be addressed before we vote on approval of minutes? All right, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from July's meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Eames?
Commissioner Robertson, second the approval.
Thank you. Sweet. All right. Moving right along into the. Oh, I'm sorry. I always forget to actually do the vote. You need to give me like a sign, like everybody raise your hand. No. All right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. Now I can go ahead? All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
No problem.
All right, so we have 2 projects on the agenda today, and the first one is going to be presented by Ms. Susan McLoof, and it's for the Historic St. Mary's City Commission and DGS project for ADA accessible restrooms.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chairman, Project Subcommittee. So good morning. I am Susan McLoof, and I'll be presenting the Historic St. Mary's City Commission Department of General Services State House Accessible Restrooms Project. The project requires review and approval by the Commission because it is not eligible for review under the Memorandum of Understanding between Historic St. Mary's City Commission and the Critical Area Commission. The project also requires conditional approval due to buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes. Before we continue, I'd like to introduce Joe Kangas. He's the Director of Facilities and Grounds for Historic St. Mary's City Commission, and he's attending the meeting today on behalf of the project and will be available to assist in answering any questions you might have at the conclusion of the presentation. So I'd like to begin by sharing an outline for today's presentation. We'll begin with the project overview, including the project location. Then we'll discuss the critical area impacts and the proposed mitigation for those impacts. We'll cover the state agency reviews, the climate resiliency assessment, and public notice for the project. Then we'll review the conditional approval process and describe how the project addresses the requirements for conditional approval, including providing mitigation for the critical area impacts. And finally, we'll have time for questions at the end. So Historic St. Mary's City proposes to construct a new State House accessible restrooms facility on the site of the existing non-accessible restroom facility. The proposed work involves demolishing the existing restroom structure, constructing the new accessible restroom facility, constructing an accessible concrete walkway, including a footbridge leading from the reconstructed State House to the new facility, and removal of existing brick and timber stairs within a steep slope. The new accessible restroom facility has been designed and sited to meet ADA requirements and will provide safe, accessible facilities to all historic St. Mary's City visitors. So this historic St. Mary's State House is a very popular tourist destination. The existing restroom facility is not ADA compliant. The existing structure is located down a steep hill and is accessed via brick and timber stairs. To ensure accessibility, the project includes an ADA-compliant pathway from the State House to the new facility and accessible restroom features in the interior of the structure. The existing brick and timber stairs will be removed and the area will be restored and replanted with native species. The project has an anticipated start date of fall 2022, and construction is expected to be complete by spring 2023. The project requires conditional approval under COMAR by the Commission because of the buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes. So this slide shows you the location of the project. St. Mary's County is highlighted in red in this map of Maryland. A map of historic St. Mary's City can be seen in the lower left corner, and the project location is indicated by the red marker. So zooming in a bit more on the aerial imagery on the right, the yellow oval indicates the project location. The project is located right here. You can see the existing restroom facility right here, and this is the reconstructed State House outside here. And as noted earlier, an ADA compliant walkway will provide access from the State House to the new facility. So the new walkway will go this way. So the site is currently, as we said, occupied by the existing restroom facility, which is indicated by the yellow circle. Here's the State House once again, and the restrooms are currently accessed via the brick and timber steps within the steep slope. So it's a little difficult to see, but the existing pathway is like right here, and it goes through steep slopes. So the critical area designations are indicated by the red and green shading. The red shading is intensely developed area, or IDA, and the green shading is RCA. And as you can see, this project is located entirely within the RCA. So here's the site plan showing the proposed conditions. The existing restroom facility is shown in red, and the new facility and the ADA compliant walkway is shown in yellow. The green indicates the area of canopy removal within the buffer. So as you can see, the footprint of the new accessible facility is larger than the existing facility. This expansion is required to provide additional space within the building to accommodate wheelchair access and other accessibility features. The 100-foot buffer is located here. So here's the 100-foot buffer. St. Mary's River is over here. And the buffer has also been expanded, and it's shown by the other two dotted lines. So this is the first buffer expansion here, and that's due to these steep slopes within the 100-foot buffer. So that is the first buffer expansion. And in addition, there are perpendicular steep slopes on this site. So the buffer was also expanded to include these perpendicular steep slopes. So then in essence, the expanded critical area buffer follows this line right here. So because it required an expanded buffer, the majority of the project is located within this expanded buffer and within the steep slopes. We'll discuss in more detail on a later slide why the existing topography makes it impossible to avoid buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes, and why constructing the new accessible facility on the site of the existing restroom facility minimizes impacts to archaeologically sensitive resources. So regarding critical area impacts, there are no impacts to tidal or non-tidal wetlands or any other habitat protection areas other than the critical area buffer. Within the project site, existing lot coverage is 0.01 acres and proposed lot coverage is 0.03 acres. The overall lot coverage on the State House parcel is 14%, which meets the 15% lot coverage limit within the RCA. So as noted earlier, the project will disturb the critical area buffer. Permanent disturbance is 1,189 square feet, and canopy removal within the buffer is 1,400 square feet. In addition, 550 square feet of existing lot coverage within the buffer will be removed, and the area will be restored and revegetated. The project is proposed by a state agency, and therefore it must meet the critical area 10% phosphorus reduction requirement, which is 0.03 pounds of phosphorus per year for this project. And due to the potential to impact archaeological resources, no on-site stormwater management facilities are being proposed. Instead, the critical area 10% requirement will be met through planting and the installation of one 50-gallon frame barrel. So the required buffer mitigation for the project is 4,417 square feet, and 2,640 square feet of planting is required to address the 10% pollutant reduction. The total planting is 7,057 square feet, and this will be met with both on-site and off-site plantings. Approximately 4,000 square feet of planting will be provided on-site, and 3,100 square feet will be provided off-site. The off-site planting area is located near the historic St. Mary's City Visitor Center, and is also near the RCA and adjacent to a stream. The on-site and off-site planting areas are included as attachments in your staff report. This slide shows the on-site planting area and the proposed species, including the following native species: white oak, scarlet oak, wild azalea, and maple leaf viburnum. And this slide also shows the area within the steep slopes of the existing pathway. This is where the brick and timber stairs will be removed, and this area will be restored and revegetated here. And this is the new access pathway here. So regarding agency reviews, stormwater management is not required because the project LOD is less than 5,000 square feet. Sediment and erosion control was approved by MDE on May 25th, 2022. DNR Wildlife and Heritage Service confirmed in a letter dated April 2nd, 2022, that there are no official records of any state or federal listed, candidate, proposed, or rare plant or animal species on the project site. And for MHT, in a letter dated June 17, 2022, MHT determined that the project would constitute an adverse effect on the historic property. Historic St. Mary City agreed to fulfill 2 conditions related to recordation and archaeological monitoring to satisfactorily reduce this adverse effect. In an email dated August 2nd, 2022, MHT stated that consultation with Historic St. Mary's City will be ongoing as the project moves into construction, and MHT has no objection to critical area review and approval of the project. So COMAR 2702-0503 requires state agencies who are proposing development activities on state-owned lands to demonstrate that the agency has considered the likelihood of inundation by sea level rise over the course of the design life of the project, and to demonstrate that the development identifies and incorporates climate resilient practices in order to avoid or minimize environmental or structural damage associated with the coastal hazard, an extreme weather event, sea level rise, and other coastal impacts. Historic St. Mary City completed a coastal resiliency analysis for this project. And based on this analysis, the entirety of the project site is located outside of vulnerable areas. The proposed restroom facility, indicated by the red marker on the images shown on this slide, is located beyond the projected 10-foot sea level rise zone and beyond the projected storm surge of Category 1 through Category 4 hurricanes. There are no mapped wetland adaptation areas on site. The closest wetland adaptation area is a low priority area located southwest of the site. And in addition, the project is not located within the 100-year or 500-year FEMA floodplain. As required by COMAR 2703-0103, public notice of the project is required. An ad was published in the Southern Maryland News on August 5th, 2022, and a sign was posted on the site, and no comments were received. So as noted earlier, the project will result in buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes. Therefore, conditional approval by the Commission is required. As discussed on the next slides, Historic St. Mary City has submitted information to meet the conditional approval requirements. So Historic St. Mary City must show that if the law were literally enforced, special features would prohibit this project. The existing topography and the existing restroom facility make it impossible to avoid buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes. These impacts have been minimized to the extent possible while still achieving the project goal of providing accessible restroom facilities to all Historic St. Mary City visitors. Rebuilding on a site that has previously been developed also minimizes impacts to sensitive archaeological areas. And the reason for this is that it avoids potential archaeological impacts at a new, completely undeveloped site. The project otherwise provides substantial public benefits to the critical area program. The proposed mitigation plantings will provide water quality and habitat benefits both on-site and at a nearby off-site location. The plantings within the steep slopes on-site will have the added benefit of stabilizing the slopes and reducing runoff. In addition, the existing brick and timber stairs located within the steep slopes will be removed, and the area will be restored and revegetated with native shrubs. The project otherwise is in conformance with Subtitle 270205. Other than the buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes, the project conforms to the regulations in this subtitle. So the conditional approval request must also include the following information. Literal enforcement of COMAR 270205 would prevent the proposed activity. If the buffer disturbance impacts the steep slopes are not allowed on this site, it would prevent historic St. Mary's City from meeting ADA requirements for accessible restroom facilities. The proposed design includes ADA-compliant restroom facilities and an accessible pathway between the State House and the restrooms to ensure access for all historic St. Mary's City visitors. The project conforms insofar as possible with the approved local critical area program. Other than the buffer disturbance and impacts to steep slopes, the proposed project does conform to the criteria in 270205. And mitigation measures are proposed to offset adverse effects. Mitigation is proposed for buffer disturbance at a 3-to-1 ratio and an additional 1-to-1 ratio for the canopy removed. Additional plantings will be provided to address the 10% phosphorus reduction requirement. The plantings will take place both on-site and off-site. The off-site plantings are located near the RCA and adjacent to a stream channel and will therefore provide water quality and habitat benefits in keeping with the intent of the critical area law. In addition, the existing brick and timber stairs within that steep slope will be removed and the area will be restored and revegetated to stabilize the slope and reduce runoff. So staff recommends approval of this project. I'll turn it back over to Ms. Hertz for
I have a question.
discussion of questions.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned about the canopy, the replacement of the trees.
Yes. Mhm.
Why do you always do just a 1-to-1? Because probably half of the trees that get planted die.
Well, for the buffer disturbance itself, it's 3-to-1, and then it's like an additional 1-to-1, so it's kind of like an extra, that's the requirement in COMAR, is I guess that.
So for every tree you take in a buffer, you plant 3,
The buffer disturbance,
Okay.
yes, exactly.
and
3-to-1,
then
an
any other
additional.
tree that's outside the buffer is just on a 1-to-1 basis.
And for the canopy removal within the buffer, it's 1-to-1, yeah, so it's like an additional, in addition to any buffer disturbance,
So it's actually 4 in the
Well,
buffer.
I was trying to wrap my head around
Yep,
that.
4 in the buffer and then 1 outside the buffer.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you, good question.
Any other questions from Commissioner?
It was a very good presentation.
Thank you, thank you,
I certainly plan to approve this, but I thank you.
thank you.
I just have just a
Sure.
general question. It sounded like there were going to be archaeological impacts, whether it was on this site or in a new site, and I was just curious if any alternatives had been considered at a different location to avoid buffer impacts.
And I will probably throw that to Joe because I don't know of any alternatives, yes.
It's mostly because of the existing bathroom already being there and its proximity to the State House and the guests there. And so we figured it'd be less impact, especially archaeologically. That's an extremely sensitive area in that whole town center area which it lies. So anywhere in those areas are extremely delicate. Down the hill is a little less delicate actually, because it's on a steep slope where that bathroom was put. So I'm assuming that they originally put it there because it had less impact in the first place. So Travis Parner, our director of archaeology, has stated that just expanding that a little bit would be much better than trying to find a new location. And the path is going to be built up also to try to preserve archaeology, not dug down in deep.
I think I also read in the staff report that there would be ongoing coordination between your group and Maryland Historic Trust, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you're going to be monitoring as you go along?
Yes, and our archaeology will monitor them, and they'll come up with a report on what happened.
Okay, fantastic. I had the same question, so thanks for asking it.
Yeah, we had the same question too, exactly, we got a lot of MHT, and then we reached out to MHT again to ensure that we have that email, that we want to have to see that language. We are okay with the commission, so we make sure, especially with Historic St. Mary's City, as always, that we get super confirmation that they are good to go.
Awesome. Any more questions? Okay. Before I mess this up, Nick, this is a conditional approval, so how do I word this for,
So I think for this, you just do the motion.
okay,
If you want a motion to approve, I think it's in the afternoon.
that I have to
Do
be
the-
specific?
Yes, you
Okay,
have to be
I have
specific.
that spelled out.
Yes,
All
yeah,
right,
but
cool.
I think for this morning, it's just a motion
Motion to approve.
to approve.
Okay.
Well, then I make a motion to approve.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pat. May I get a second?
Okay.
All right. All those in favor of approving this project, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you. And now we have Jen Esposito presenting out on, I believe this is the Chapel Point State Park project. And it's through Charles County, I believe, one of their departments, so.
Yes.
All right, take it away.
Okay, try to get out of your way. Still be able to see my notes. Okay, good job. Good morning. As Commissioner of Subcommittee Chair Hurd said that, my name is Jennifer Esposito. I'll be presenting the Chapel Point Park improvements. It is a state park. However, the county, I'm bringing this on behalf of the county today. We also have Kyle Redden from Planning and Growth Management and James Sandy from Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. And the reason that is on behalf of the county today is because there is a lease agreement from the Maryland Park Service and the county. And I'll get into a little bit of that in more detail. This is brought to you before you as a conditional approval, which Susan, good thing she went before me, kind of gave a lot more detail of what that conditional approval process is, but it's brought to you on the local side of projects under COMAR 27020601. So Chapel Point Park is in Charles County. It is on the east side of the Port Tobacco River, which is a tributary to the Potomac. Here's a close-up of the dark green outlining the area of the park. So the park consists of 821 acres. Roughly 214 of those acres are on critical area lands designated as a resource conservation area. It's a mix of hardwood forest, agricultural lands. There's several streams, wetlands, and beaches on the property. And 50 acres of the 821 is leased by the county, which is shown in the yellow area here. So the proposed improvements are part of the lease agreement, as I mentioned earlier, between Maryland Park Service and Charles County Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. The terms of the lease agreement were based on a jointly prepared and approved management plan that to better define access, shoreline access, and parking areas. And just before we get into it, a little brief, interesting history of the site. It houses the oldest Catholic parish in continuous service in the U.S. It's called St. Thomas Manor at St. Ignatius. It was founded in 1641 by Jesuit priests. In the 1880s, the Jesuits formed a joint venture with the Howard brothers to build a Hotel Bellevue. This was a riverside resort to draw people in from Washington by steamboats. And in 1930s, a gentleman named Ben Bowling purchased the property from the Jesuits to build a amusement park called Chapel Point, the Pride of the Potomac. We couldn't find a lot of photos, but I found this one. The amusement park consists of picnic areas, bathing beaches, and this awesome water slide. This is a photo credit of 1940 by Theodore. Good luck with that. Or Zach. But I also tried to find a photo of the hotel and I could not find one. But so for the project before you today, as I said, Charles County is seeking approval under a conditional approval process to better define and improve existing access drives. This I'm going to refer to as the North Fisherman Access. They're also proposing to install 1,400 square foot pole barn maintenance building and parking area. Better define and improve the access drive in here and to provide parking spaces down to Midway Beach access, which is currently and will continuously be a hand carry watercraft access point. So as currently the parking area for all the way down here is up here and it's quite a long way to haul your watercraft. I'm going to kind of talk through the improvements using photos from a site visit that commission staff attended. Your detailed site plans are attachment 1 of your staff report. So here is the entrance of Chapel Clint Park. You're looking at it around here on the site plan, continuing this way to North Fisherman's access, and here towards Midway Beach access. Again, a lot of the proposal or improving existing gravel drives, paving, expanding some of the drive access in certain areas to allow for better two-way traffic. So you can see it's pretty narrow in some spaces. And a detailed list of the scope of work is listed on page 2 of your staff report. Here is the North Fisherman access parking. They are going to improve this, pave this area. There are areas that are outside of the existing parking defined areas that people are using and compacting on a daily basis. They're seeing increase in visitation. So they will be expanding some parking in certain areas. But again, the areas that they're expanding are currently being used. They are providing a reinforced turf and turnaround area down to the access to the water. They are installing a gate for permitted access only for fishermen to be able to bring their boats and get their catch like that. They're reinstalling new kiosks for information, trash receptacles, and I think 1 porta potty in this area, maybe 2. This is looking at the access way and where the maintenance pole barn building and parking will be. This is a follow build currently. And they're also providing stormwater as well in that area. So now I'm going to continue down to the Midway Beach access drive and the shoreline access point. Here, they are expanding and providing additional parking where existing tree line is currently located. We did walk the site with our science advisor, Claudia Jones. This is considered forest interior dwelling species habitat. However, and I'll show you in the photos in a moment, but a lot of the edge areas where the parking areas are being proposed, it's highly invasive Ailanthus or tree of heaven and other invasive species is a pretty dominant species in that area. There's also a historic corn crib on the side of the access drive that they will be placing stabilized fence around. They will install a couple porta potties along the way. They will be placing new informational kiosks down here, improving the access drive, paving the access drive, putting reinforced turf down at the bottom. And again, this is for hand carry watercraft only. This is the Midway Beach access drive. They will be improving this road, expanding it slightly, and then just more for the shoulders, but providing parking on some certain areas along the side. Another photo to show you. And then that's the historic corn crib. Another area where parking will be. The access down to Midway Beach. And then down at the shoreline looking back up. This is where the reinforced turf will be installed. So as noted, this is coming to you as a conditional approval. And the reason for that is that there are non-water dependent buffer impact areas. This is shown as attachment 2 to your staff report. The buffer line is the darker hatching line style noted here. The yellow indicates existing, what is considered water dependent activities, which is a permitted activity for COMAR. The green is representing the expansion of water dependent activities. The orange is your existing non-water dependent activities, such as your parking areas. And the pink are areas that are better defined or expanded. And your blue is representing the stormwater management features that they're putting in, a grass swale to the north side of the parking, a micro basin to the south side of the parking. And those will be considered non-water dependent activities. Unfortunately, those are the lower lying areas that is going to be able to capture that stormwater to treat the existing and the little bit of expansion of new impervious surface. So overall impacts, I broke down, this is on page 3 of your staff report. Buffer impacts by water dependent, additional canopy removed, and non-water dependent. Each activity type has a corresponding ratio. There's also, like I said, forest interior dwelling species or FIDS habitat impacts. So forest clearing outside of the buffer as well, for a total of 2.27 acres of required mitigation. The county is proposing to mitigate at least getting a 1-to-1 ratio back in the buffer. It turns out to be more, but they're at least getting the 1-to-1 back in the buffer by native understory canopy herbaceous species. They're also planting in areas to enhance existing FIDS habitat by providing landscape stock and seedling stock mixture. They're providing 3.29 acres, so over an acre of required mitigation back on site. For permit review and agency review, the county has received approvals in the local stormwater and erosion and sediment control plans. They received response from DNR Wildlife and Heritage Service that it is, the forest area on site is for interior FIDS habitat. The guidelines of their proposal have been followed, so that's why mitigation is at a 1-to-1 for the forest clearing. And it did note that the waterway is a waterfowl concentration area. However, there's no in-water work being proposed at the time of this project. MHT noted that there are 2 recorded active archaeological sites. However, this proposed project will have no adverse effect. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service indicated there's no critical habitat, refuge lands, or fish hatcheries in the project vicinity, and the county met their public notice requirements. So again, this is coming to you as a conditional approval. In order to qualify for consideration by the commission for conditional approval, the county has to show that the project meets certain standards. The county has provided a very detailed response to all the questions that Susan went through previously. I think it's page 4 through 6 on your staff report, but I will just briefly summarize. Again, this project is directed by a management plan per a lease agreement through Maryland Park Service and the county. They are providing best management practices on site to treat existing and new impervious surface. They are basically better defining existing areas of drive and parking and providing new parking for an increase in visitation to provide public access to the water. And they're mitigating their non-water dependent buffer impacts at a 3-to-1 ratio. So with that, staff recommends approval of the project, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Sandy Hertz for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I did have a question related to the ailanthus and the invasive species on site. Is there, and you might have said this, so I apologize, I've been a little distracted this morning. Is there a plan to do invasive species control or removal? And then a second part of that question is, how are you going to ensure that any seedlings or nursery stock that is planted is not outcompeted by the tree of heaven?
So there is a, I guess, in the general planting plan, there is a invasive species control and insurance that they get the required amounts of plantings. Obviously, with some of the lower stock, you do see that some of that dies off just because of how it's a small plant.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a required amount that's supposed to be monitored per year quarterly, I believe. And I'll let James talk about this, but when we were out there, we even saw like some of the invasive species, not specifically the Atlantis,
The
but
wavy
other-
basket grass.
Yes, that they had, already started, kind of removing that since we're.
You will have park staff monitor it on a regular basis to keep your invasive species somewhat under control. I don't think you can completely
Right.
eradicate it. But the tree of heaven trees that are in that side, the LOD, will be completely grubbed. And the stump and everything will come out. So that'll help that process. And anything outside the LOD, we'll have to address, according to, because I can't grub it, but I'll have
Right.
to cut it accordingly.
And is there any concern about deer or other predation on the smaller stock?
In that part of the country is always a concern with deer. I don't know how you would completely stop that other than putting fencing around it. And putting fencing around it, I don't think is a good idea. But we'll have staff monitoring it on twice a week or 3 times a week basis, keeping everything maintained, looking for them.
Sounds good.
And we'll be notified once the mitigation is planted to go out, check, and then they'll have survivability requirements. But the site itself has pretty good free tier and a really good candidate for natural regeneration. The areas where Allianthus was prevalent was actually, there were houses and other the buildings and structures there at one point in time that were no longer there, but that area was previously disturbed. And that is one of the reasons why on that, the side of the access drive where it was really prevalent was because it was previously disturbed. So,
Okay.
we're hoping.
Were there any other questions from the commissioners? No? All right. Can I get a motion to approve this project?
Commissioner Robertson, motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Robertson. Can I get a second? All right, Commissioner Parker. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. And I believe that is the last of our agenda items, and so we have 8 minutes to stare at each other until lunch.